what I'd like to say to black men is don't be afraid of being a black man. Don't try to be something less than being a man. And when I say being a man, that does not mean that you're going to be callous, that you're going to be cold, and men can cry, men can show emotion. Men have 23 X chromosomes in their system, which means that there's a part of us that has a female in us. We came from a female. And the reason that those 23 chromosomes are there is for us to respect the female inside of us so that we can respect the female outside of us.
Welcome to KROSS BARZ, the podcast where we discuss interesting topics with alternative perspective. I am your co-host, Big O, and I have with me...
Hey, Tanae is back in the building one more time with brother Abiodun Oyewole. Oh my God, he is a poet, political activist, mentor, professor, father of hip-hop. You can give him all kind of names and the dots. He's everything. He's everything to me. We're humbled to have you here on KROSS BARZ podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Abiodun. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you for this invitation.
Okay, so we have to ask, where are you originally from, sir?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I was raised in Jamaica, Queens, and I was raised even though I was raised in Jamaica, Queens, my father brought Savannah, Georgia to Jamaica, Queens. And what I mean by that is that I used to feed chickens and rabbits before I went to school. We had a vacant lot across the street from my house, and he turned it into a mini farm. So I can grow anything, corn, tomatoes, collard greens, peppers, you name it. We had a grapevine and right in front of our garage, and my father took a piece of the grapevine and made another grapevine. So we had two grapevines. I know how to make wine. I can make peach. I can make grape preserve. I know how to do all that because my father believed in he was a black power man without even understanding what that whole concept was about. He lived black power because he was from Savannah, Georgia. And he believed in being self-reliant, and he said if the stores were on strike, we're going to eat anyway because we always had food. We had a freezer full of food. But the problem is, as a child, I hated it because I had to work all the time. And people don't realize
in the city too. In the city, you're a farm. Okay.
Yeah, my friends lived in the projects. They didn't have to get up and make up their bed. I had to get up and make my bed after I got up every day, and I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning. So my life as a child was not exactly happiness because I wanted to play. I thought I was cute. I wanted to play with girls, all that stuff. and my father had me working like a mule, but now that I'm grown, I realize that he set me up to realize that if you want anything in this world, you got to work for it. And there's not any job you can give me that I cannot do. And I used to get whippings. I used to get beatings with a strap. And he'd even tell me, you got to take your clothes off because I'm not tearing up the clothes I paid for. So I'd get whippings naked. And the deal is that I hated it because, of course, who wants to get a whipping? But the truth is that I actually recognize it. And of course, the line was, you spare the rod, spoil the child. And it was an old school fashion of being raised. But the one thing I remember, we had a tight family. We ate breakfast every morning together. We sat at the table and we ate. We talked about what was going on with our lives during the day. There was a communication. There was a family kind of understanding. And I was raised in a strict fashion. But now looking back, there is nothing that you can give me that I can't handle. And my father used to say, when he whipped me, he says, I'm not whipping you because you didn't do what I told you to do. I'm whipping you because you didn't want to do what I told you to do. Because anything you want to do, you can do it. And that stuck with me because he was right. If I really have a desire to do something, I can do it. Like right now, for example, I'm not only a poet and all other stuff. I become a painter. I just had my exhibition, my first poet painting exhibition at the gallery in Harlem about a month ago.
Okay.
And I sold like 3 paint. I still can't believe it myself. It's crazy, but I'm able to paint. I had one of my artist friends, Adi Mola, who is a very well-known painter, over to my house to access some of my work. And he said, man, you got a good thing for colors, man. You got a natural thing going. And I didn't know that. I had no idea I had that skill. But I do know that if you put your passion into anything, you can you can come up with some good ideas, and some good things may occur because you put your heart into it. And that's what I learned as a child. So when you talk about my beginnings, I have to give my mother and my father credit. My father was mean, and we didn't have no storytelling with me sitting on his knee and all that stuff. He had me working. My mother was love and laughter and fun, and I loved being around her. I wanted to stay in the house and wash the dishes because she hated washing dishes.
What was your mom's profession? Was she just a homemaker?
My mother was a domestic. She worked in white people's houses. She cleaned houses. She was a caterer. If you had a party and you wanted to cater, my mother was the best caterer around. She makes the cake stand up and dance for you. I mean, she was a monster. I mean, was
she also from South Carolina, Charleston area?
She was from Atlanta, Georgia. She was from Atlanta. And my father was from Savannah, Georgia. And how they met is because she was in Cincinnati. She had a store. My grandfather had a store. He was a candy maker. My grandfather, I should be rich. My grandfather invented bonbons, but he could never get a patent. But my grandfather had a candy store, and my mother worked in the candy store, and she needed meat because they made hamburgers and stuff like that. And so she found out that there was this man down in Georgia who had a farm, and he had beef. And so they started communicating. And on the phone, he told us, I'm going to marry you. I like the way you do business. He never met her. Never met her. And they got married. That was my father, Joseph Davis, and my mother was Elvina Davis. And even though I have to backtrack a bit because it's important, I refer to him as my mother, my father, but he was not my real father because I never met my real father, and she was not my real mother. She was my mother's sister. And my real mother is still alive, and we're very, very close. And the reason that I was given to her to be raised because my mother had me out of wedlock, and when you have a child out of wedlock in the late 40s, that was almost like that was a sin for real.
Yeah.
And plus the man that she had married, for some reason I didn't like his vibe, and my mother was trying to get us to bond, and it never worked out. But she knew that her sister loved me, and she knew that I loved her sister. Because every time she came over to the house, it would be joy. She would hug me and kiss me and just hold me and I was everything to her. She didn't have any children. I don't know why she couldn't, but I was her child. She raised me. And when she left Cincinnati, Ohio, she was leaving Cincinnati, Ohio with her new husband, Joseph Davis. And according to the stories, I was 3 years old, and I ran upstairs and put on my cowboy hat, my boots, my guns, and everything else, and came downstairs and told everybody I was going to go to New York with Aunt Beanie. And Aunt Beanie became my mother at 3 years old. I decided on my destiny and came to New York City, and then my story goes on from there.
Okay.
Right. Did you have brothers and sisters with your mom? Did you have brothers and sisters with her?
My mother, my natural mother, who actually got married to this man that I couldn't bond with, she had 4 more children, 2 girls and 2 boys. I just lost my brother who was very close to me from COVID about 2 years ago. And I have a brother that's still with me, my youngest brother, Cornell. I have a sister that lives in Atlanta, Georgia. Her name is Anita. And I have another sister who passed away from multiple sclerosis about 10 years ago. And I really think she passed away from a broken heart because she had a guy that was in her life who kept telling her lies about him building a house for her and he's going to do things for her. They were all lies. And I think that worked on her. It worked on her emotionally to the point where she got ill. Because a lot of times illnesses don't come from the things we eat badly. A lot of times it comes from our emotional state. And when your emotional state is unbalanced, germs will come into your system. Yeah. So she developed something, and I still say she died from a broken heart. Yeah. But I'm very close to my sister in Atlanta, who happens to also be a fantastic cook. She can bake. She's a monster cook. Makes the best carrot cake in America, as far as I'm concerned. And my youngest brother, who is a sheet metal genius, he can do anything you can imagine with sheet metal. So, and these skills all came from my grandfather, who had a multitude of skills. He was extremely skillful in everything he did. And I think we all got a little piece of that in us because my grandfather wrote, I write, my grandfather cooked, my sister cooks, my grandfather could do anything. My grandfather made candy, and he was also the first licensed brick mason in Cincinnati, Ohio. So he could make bricks with his hands and he could make candy with his hands. That's quite a dichotomy.
Yes, absolutely. So now you're in Queens, New York, with your mom and your father. He's making you
Right.
work in the lot across the street. You're growing vegetables.
Yes.
You're learning how to, basically survive on your own. So if the society breaks down, you guys will be okay. Now, my thought process is you going to school. Were you thriving in school, or was that like you didn't really care for it?
Man, no, I was a super student. I was an excellent student, which my
Okay.
father thought was kind of funny because he only went to the third grade, and I could have never. If I had told him, like, I never even thought about being a poet. I was told by my homeroom teacher that I had natural poetic skills because I had challenged her. You know, when they give you those vocabulary words to look up and write a composition using vocabulary words. Well, I got real jiggy with my teacher. And I said, if I put these words in a poem, can I get extra credit? And she said, if you put these 10 words in a cohesive poem, I'll give you 2 extra credits. So I was always a good English student because when I went to school, I was 5 years old, I knew how to read, I knew how to write, and I'm not talking about print. I could write my name in cursive because my mother had taken my hand, put her hand over the top of mine, and showed me how to write my name. I got put in the principal's office when I was in the first grade because the teacher said, put your name at the top of the page, and I wrote my name. I didn't print it.
She was
and
like,
I got
being fancy.
Yeah, no, and she punished me for that. And I told my mother, said, well, how was your first day at school? And I said, I spent it in the principal's office. She went to the school and said, I'll sue the Board of Education. My son knows how to do stuff that the other kids have not learned how to do, and you're going to punish him? You know, it's amazing how the system tries to hold you back when you're moving forward. And I experienced that at an early age. But my mother she was a sheriff of my life. You weren't going to do nothing wrong and get away with it. My mother was on the case. So and I was very proud. Matter of fact, my mother was my very first vocal coach. I had no idea I had a big mouth. I mean, she at 10 years old, she told the church that I was going to do. We went to Southern Baptist Church right here in Harlem. Sundays were fabulous days because every Sunday we would come from Queens to Harlem. Oh, I loved it. Oh God, I look forward to Sunday because Harlem was just black arrogance, man. And you can see black.
So why did you? So you living in Queens, but you go to church in Harlem. You didn't find like no cohesiveness in Queens because most of the time Queens was very affluent black people.
Yeah, yet my father had a sister, and we called her Aunt Baby. She was the first one. She was called Baby. She lived in Harlem, and she went to a church in Harlem, and so that was a church that my father went to also, and so. And church was like a social gathering place. Yeah, you get dressed up. And my father always had a nice car, and you drive your car in front of the church, let everybody see your ride. It was a show and tell type of situation, especially when it comes to black folks. I even caught my father putting some of my mother's perfume on, trying to smell sweet. I want to tell people he ain't the sweet Deacon Davis that you'll think. That man's a mean man. He's got my mother's perfume on. I wanted to blow his cover. And the woman thought he was handsome and he was all of that. He was a mean man. I wanted to tell the world how mean he was. And my Aunt Baby, she used to always tell him, Joe, don't beat that boy so much because he's going to grow up to hurt people because of you hurting him. And he'd always say, he think he clever, baby. He think he clever. But coming to Harlem to go to church was a very important day for me because I got a chance to come to Harlem and I saw a whole nother lifestyle because it's different than Queens. And my mother, on one Sunday when I was 10, for Easter Sunday, they always have a big pageant. And she told Reverend Wilson, that was the name of the pastor, says, my son is going to recite the Lord's Prayer for Easter Sunday. I had nothing to do with this. She voluntarily told them that that's what I was going to do. So we get to our house in Queens, New York, and she told me to go. She told me to go downstairs in the basement and recite the Lord's Prayer. And she wants to hear me upstairs in the kitchen. Now, I think my mother's crazy. She got to be out of her mind.
She wanted
You
to see
can't.
how loud you can get your voice so that she could hear it upstairs.
Yeah, she wanted to hear my voice in the kitchen, upstairs. How can you do that without yelling? I'm down in the basement. So she says, now I want you to say the Lord's Prayer so I can hear you upstairs. So I said, I said, and she ran downstairs like a crazy woman and hit me in my stomach. And she said, boy, put that air in your stomach and open up your mouth. You don't yell the Lord's Prayer. Are you crazy? And I didn't know what she was talking about. But I put the air in my stomach and I opened up my mouth and she could hear me. And I mean, I'm 10. I don't know what's going on. It came, Easter Sunday came. The pastor put the microphone down on the floor for me to recite the Lord's Prayer. And my mother jumped up from the pew, snatched that microphone, and said, he don't need no mic. And the church said, oh, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. You know, I had people 30, 40 years later talking about how they had never heard nobody recite the Lord's Prayer like that. I had no idea. My mother was she actually prepared me for the work that I've been doing for the last 50 years.
Public speaking, absolutely.
Because, I mean, it's amazing because we had a gig at Boston College one time, and there was a racist cat that was running the sound system. And I knew he was racist because the mic kept on acting up. And I got on the mic and I was doing When the Revolution Comes, as a matter of fact, I was doing that poem, and the mic just went off. And I slammed it like some of the rappers that slammed the mic on the stage. I slammed the mic on the stage and did the poem and rocked the whole place. And he felt bad and the audience stood up. Oh, you can't. No, so I had a lot of practice and I got a lot of training at my early age for things that I had no idea that were going to be a part of my life today.
Absolutely. So now that you are excelling in academics, and your father was probably pushing you towards more vocational type things, like during that time period.
His thing was, if you're not willing to work, you're not worth the ground you're standing on. So he wanted you to work. He wanted me to work. He didn't have any real particular love for education, but he knew that was the way to go if you really wanted to be successful. So he didn't come down on me about it, but he would ask me, like one time we were sitting at the breakfast table and he said, well, you're a senior now. What you going to do when you graduate from high school? I said, I'm going to college. He said, yeah, faggots go to college. And I hated that. I mean, why I got to be a faggot because I'm going to college?
Oh, wow. That's that old school. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I got up from the table and I walked out and I slammed the screen door and I knew he was going to come after me because he's a big struck. And all he did was laugh. I just heard him laughing. And I came back in the house and he had gone to work. And my mother said, Joe didn't mean anything by that. He just wants you to be a man, that's all. And he doesn't want you to be soft. That's all he's trying to do. But he had a crude way of doing that. And I hated it. I was not going to be a faggot. That was not in my chart at all. But he was definitely on my case because he saw people. He would point out this guy who was pushing rags down the street every Saturday. And he pointed to me and said, see that man over there? He got a college education. And he would point out the fact that there's some people who had been to college and had failed.
Right.
And his whole thing to me, he wanted to give me a lesson, say, in life, no matter what you decide to do, you got to work. You cannot avoid the fact that you got to work. And I have that work ethic stays with me. I mean, I had a friend of mine named Johnny Ritter, who actually happened to have been Stevie Wonder's accountant at one point. We went to school together, and we were very good friends. And he wanted to spend a couple of weeks during the summer with me because he lived in the projects. I wanted to live in the projects because my friends in the projects, they didn't have to work like I had to work. But he wanted to live with me because he thought living in a house would be nice. But he didn't know the rules. 5:30, you had to be up in my house. That was my father's call. Because he said, I got to be up at that time. Everybody in the house better be up at 5:30. So at 5:30, he's like, hey, get up. And Johnny's like upset. He said, then my father said the magic words. He said, we're going to make some money today. So Johnny's eyes got big, said, ooh, we got to make money. But he didn't know. See, Daddy Joe say, we got to make some money. You don't know what you're getting ready to do. And I was worried.
You might be doing some chickens. You might be cutting some meat. You'll never know, right?
He took us out to Oyster Bay, Long Island, which is way out there, to a potato farm. I did not know they had potato farms out there. And you got $1 for every 5-pound bag of potatoes you pick. So if you want to make some money, you got to pick a whole bunch of 5-pound bags. And I knew how to work because Daddy Joe was he was the daggone work leader in my life. So I knew how to get work done quickly. Johnny had never worked that hard in his life.
Mm.
And he worked, and on the way back in the pickup truck, he fell asleep, got to the house, and he started packing his stuff. I said, Johnny, what you doing? He said, man, I can't stay here. You get up with the chickens. You work like a slave. Man, I want to go back home. Johnny spent one night at my house because of the work ethic that was required if he was to stay with me. So I got a good dose of that.
Yeah. So now, you know, you're going to college. Your father is kind of, you know, snickering, but he wants you to be a man. I assume that your mother was proud. And what college did you choose to attend?
I wanted to go to UCLA because I played basketball with Lou Alcindor.
You played with? Hold on. We gotta touch that now. What did you play with them, like on a team?
I went to Heron High School. Heron High School is now where John Jay College is here in New York City. 59th Street and 10th Avenue was Heron High School. It was an all-boys high school. I deliberately went there because I knew if I was in school with girls, I would never graduate. I like girls too much.
Sound like Big O.
So I knew I had to go to school with no girls. Even though I did talk to a couple of teachers like I was all of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right. Let's go over the gusto.
Powell Memorial was a school where Lou Alcindor went to.
Correct.
And we both walked from the subway at 59th Street and Columbus Circle. We came the same route because this school was diagonally across the street from my school. And so my friends, they said, yo, man, you ought to go talk to him, Chucky. My name was Charles. They called me Chuck. He said, Chucky, you ought to go talk to him. I said, well, I mean, you're the social guy. I said, what am I say to that guy? You know, and he was so tall. And they were just, everybody was curious. You see a guy 7 feet tall, you know, you wonder what it's about. So I went over and I spoke to him.
7 feet in high school?
Huh?
He was 7 feet in high school? I thought he grew.
No. He was 7 feet tall in high school, brother.
Good God.
Can you imagine?
He did not.
You know, most of time kids grow while they're in college, like senior year, you grow 6'8".
No. Let me tell you, I'm gonna tell you a story. When I first saw him, I spoke to him, and first of all, you could tell he didn't want to talk. But I said, my name is Chuck. What's your name? And he looked down at me and said, Lou. And I said, okay. And then just said Lou, and that's it. So then I said the next obvious thing. I said, you play basketball? And he said, yeah. And that's about all he said. So I said, okay. After school, every day at Amsterdam Projects is over there on 66th Street. All the baddest ball players at Commerce, which was a high school, and any of the high schools in the area, we get together at pickup games in the park. And I was a good ball player. I was excellent. But I also was checking out the college ball players. There's a brother named Dexter Westbrook. He was an All-American, and he played for Providence. And he was on the front of my magazines of college basketball players. And he was on the bench. I always made the foul shot. Whenever I got a chance to hit the foul shot, because the first person that makes the foul shot gets the chance to be the captain of the team. So I always hit my foul shot, and I can pick the team. So I got my team, but I'm not picking this guy Lou Alcindor because he's not a nice guy. I tried to talk to him. He just told me his name was Lou, and he just said he played ball. So and he's high school. I'm picking this guy who's an All-American. Plus, he had on his black and white Providence jersey. So this is a college guy, man. He's gonna bust this young boy's behind. Brother, was I wrong? Lou Alcindor kicked out. He rocked us. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was totally embarrassing. He could do a whole lot more than dunk the ball. He could shoot jump shots. I mean, he had a game in high school. It's about when we are young from Prez, please. His game was ridiculous. So I knew he had gone to UCLA because he was a year older than me. So I knew he had gone to UCLA. And I wanted to go there. I figured if I go and he would see me and he would say, you know, he told John Wooden, this guy got a game, I'd be a walk-on, whatever. So I got acceptance to UCLA. My mother, she saw the letter. She says, are you trying to go to college in California? I said, well, if they accept me, she says, well, you do have an acceptance, but that's 3,000 miles away. And I said, yeah, I know. She says, but suppose something happens in the family, you're so far away. Can we compromise? I said, oh, God. So I didn't know what compromise meant necessarily. I looked it up, and it said, meet somebody halfway. Now, this is silly. I said, what's halfway to California? Iowa.
Iowa.
How goes there?
Nah.
I ended up going to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. But I could only take it for...
You go to Iowa. Okay.
You went to Drake?
Yes, I was only there
Wow,
for a year.
That's a real good business school. Okay. You went there for 1 year?
I couldn't take it. White folks, too many white people, man. And plus, I had to lie about where I was from. When they met me at the plane, I took an Ozark Airlines to get there. That company don't even exist. And when I got to the plane, there was this welcoming committee, and this little white girl said, where are you from in New York? I couldn't say Queens. That didn't sound like much. I said, I'm from Harlem. And everybody backed up.
That's where the banks the black people from. Okay. All right. So tell me briefly about the experience, because in the Midwest during that time period, were they very friendly? Because I know how they were in the South, and then the North may be acceptance in certain areas, but Midwest, how was it for you?
There was a lot. The acceptance it wasn't as bad as the South. They were accepting me. I mean, I really didn't experience. I even tried to date a white girl for 1 minute, and she said to me, well, she was waiting outside the locker because I was on the basketball team, and she's waiting outside the locker room, and she says, my father knew I was dating you. He would get upset. I said, your father? I said, my father would kill me. Are you crazy? So I realized right then and there that we were definitely not that wasn't going to work out.
Yeah,
because my daddy Joyce always told me, don't mess with them white girls. I ain't nothing but trouble.
Yeah.
And he told stories about how a friend of his got hung for looking at some white girl. And so, as far as he was concerned, white folks were off limits completely. Now they're selling that child on the clearance table. They want you to have her, take her. I mean, get the snow bunny.
Snow bunnies.
Yeah, man. I mean, and people don't realize just about 40, 50 years ago, it was unlawful for a brother to even think about marrying a white girl. Correct. And nowadays, you can't find a commercial on television that don't show you a black and white couple together, grinning, smiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's because they know they're dying, and we're about to be charges for them. We are the only life force that they know. And that's why and we got to realize things haven't changed from when they made Sadie take her breasts out and put that breast in that white baby's mouth. We still breastfeeding these people. That's what we came here to do, as far as they were concerned. They brought us here to save them, to give them civilization. Picking cotton was just a sidebar. They brought us here to raise them. They didn't know how to take care of themselves, and they still don't. Trump is a big, stupid kid, and he's got bad, dangerous toys to play with. And now he's got some of the black folks that are working on the side. Got Snoop Doggy Dogg. He got Snoop Dogg because he's got the right name. They worship the dog, and Snoop's name is Snoop Doggy Dogg. You can't get no better than that. He's right in their wheelhouse. The world is.
Yeah, he got a lot of backlash for that from our people when he and him and Nelly both. They got a lot of backlash for performances, and some of them were saying, "Hey, it's money. I'm gonna make money. You gonna give me money? I'm gonna take it."
Yeah,
exactly. But
right.
But Michelle got almost banned.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna tell you something. But we need to realize something. And since we're on this podcast, I'll just tell you, because we remember this forever. There are two tribes on this world. Forget about the color. Color is key. We know that. Having this melanin is magical. There's no question about it. Indeed. It gives us an advantage that a whole lot of people would love to have. But the reality is, there are just two tribes on the planet: the dog tribe and the God tribe. And I'm sure you all are members of the God tribe, like I am. And then you got some black folks who decide to be members of the dog tribe. One of the biggest issues I had with hip hop when it came out is they changed the narrative from cat to dog. Because when I was a kid, If you can play ball, say, man, that cat can play. Man, that cat can.
Absolutely.
Man, that cat can. That cat can blow that horn. Man, listen to that cat on the piano. But a cat is self-containing. You ain't got to walk a cat. A cat thinks for himself. Throw a stick out in the yard and tell the cat to go get it. The cat look at you like, you crazy, you better go get that stick
yourself. Absolutely.
A dog is an obedient follower. And when they changed it from cat to dog, I had an issue with that because we're not recognizing the value of our culture. A cat is what the Egyptians would even have their cats mummified and put into the tombs with them.
Yeah.
Correct.
A cat is sacred. Cats can think. Now they're not going to bark if somebody comes to the door, but if you pay attention, the cat will let you know somebody's at the door because they're very sensitive. They see and the cat will do his business in the litter box, and then they'll cover it up. They don't even want you to see it. And the cat will take his tongue and clean his entire body. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but cats are very self-containing.
Very true.
Yeah.
And the biggest statue on the planet is that of a sphinx, and it's the body of a cat and the face of a pharaoh. Ain't no dogs being sculpted in Egypt, but we on this dog trip for some reason. That's the white man's God because the wolf showed him how to survive when he first got to northern Europe, and the wolf is the parent of the dog. That's why you'll see in the commercials, you'll see the black man, the white woman, and a dog. Check out the commercials. The dog gets play. Lassie, Rin Tin Tin, those superstars. They got their names on Hollywood Walk and stuff.
Okay.
Wow.
I have a question. How do you feel about the dynamics between foundational Black people in the United States versus the dichotomy where they speak on people from the continent of Africa? Do you believe, like, I heard poems by Smokey Robinson saying that, man, I'm no African American, I'm Black. And then some people say, that's kind of like trying to separate
brother.
From the
ignorant.
people. Yeah, so that's why I was.
Smokey Robinson is a genius, and his genius comes from the fact that he's an African. He does not connect the dots. The genius that we have comes from the mother, and the mother is Africa. And it's and we're saying Africa, but it's Akibulan. I mean, we're dealing with the names that were thrown in our face. Smokey he's not in acceptance of his African culture because he has believed the lies. He's believed all the nonsense that they've said. They've gone out of their way to make us not love the richest continent on the face of the earth that has more resources than any other place on the planet. And the greatest resource that they have that they've taken from Africa happens to be us. And we need to recognize we are the primary resource of Africa. And we are diamond and gold and platinum and uranium walking and talking. And we need to recognize that. Smokey has those gifts. He's made some of the greatest love songs on the planet. Just the substance of love that's in his system comes from the fact that he is of African nature. He doesn't realize it. He is unfortunately ignorant. I love Smokey's music, but his brain has been totally confused because he's listened to too much of this American madness. So he's not in acceptance. They have turned us off. Morgan Freeman has the same issue. Bill Gates, he has another issue also. These folks have been bitten by the bug. They don't recognize the jewels and the root. You cannot cut off yourself from the root of who you are. And it's the African root that has allowed us to have the genius that we put on display constantly. They did not bring any slaves from Africa. They brought architects and engineers and thinkers, people who they were skills. And the fact is that they went out of their way to try to make those people slaves. That's where the slave thing came from. And unfortunately, Smokey is abiding with the slave concept and not dealing with the reality that we are the people who built empires.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on this real quick. Tony Rock, he's a comedian, and he said something about this is recently, like yesterday. I heard this. It was called "You Gotta Set." He called it "Set the Nigga Down." Is what he said, and you had to adjust your Blackness depending on where you are. So he was like, if I'm getting a job interview, I might have to dial it down to a 1 just so I can be like, sure, absolutely okay. And then when I leave out, I got to turn it up to a 6. And so it's kind of like what you're saying is, to fit in, to be a part of a community, to get a job nowadays or anything like that. People feel like they have to adjust who they are in order to get what they need here in the United States, in America. What is your take on that about having to be two different people? Because being the last poets, I don't think you guys ever did that. You were always, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. What's your take on that?
Schizophrenia has become a part of our lifestyle, because that's basically what you're talking about, being schizophrenic, having two different personalities. And basically, that's what it is. I refuse to be schizophrenic. I like me as I am, and you will either accept me or not. And the other thing about it is that I'm a lover. I'm a lover of my people. And that way, that allows me to love everybody who's got love for me. I don't care what your color is. If you are a loving human being, if you got love in your heart, we can hang. We can do a lot of things together. We can play ball together. We can have a conversation. We can eat lunch. And we can do a bunch of stuff. I have no discrimination in my system. I don't definitely date snow bunnies. I'm not down with them. I mean, I want a sister. I want somebody that can understand the way I dance and the music that I love and can make some damn collard greens. I'm not down with hollandaise sauce and asparagus. I don't want no pumpkin pie. Give me some sweet potato pie. You know? So there's a cultural thing. And we got to recognize that the culture is everything. That's the way of life.
Yeah.
And when your way of life is tampered with, I don't want to walk in your house. You got a big, beautiful mansion, and the first thing I see in the vestibule is Venus de Milo. I want to see an African person in that damn vestibule. Show me who you are. If you come to my apartment, I don't have to be here for you to know Abiodun must live here. You're going to look around the wall and say, whoa, whoever lives here, they love some African art. They show up. Wow. It couldn't be no white person. You're damn right. Because we have got to uphold who we are. You don't hide from that. And if people cannot accept you for who you are, then you just not supposed to be there. When Cicely Tyson came on TV in the early 60s, and she had an afro, she got a lot of complaints from a lot of sisters. Why she wear her hair like that? And she had it natural. And we learned over the years to give her a lot of respect and pride because she came on with an afro. And the show was called East Side, West Side. She was a social worker. And she had a natural hairstyle. And sisters go out of their way to fry and dye their hair and look like Susie Cream Cheese. And that's not exactly the image that Cicely wanted to present. She wanted to show herself in a natural way of existence. And then when we started wearing our afros, it made that nose and them lips look so much better because everything blended together. Now you have to, unfortunately, we love Michael, but Michael didn't love himself enough to not go get his nose chopped down 1,000 times, and his skin started getting whiter. And a lot of us have issues because we have fallen into following the ideals of the person that actually persecuted us and brought us here to be their servants. We were brought here to serve. And in our servitude, we started to try to emulate the person that was bringing us to serve. And the fact is that they have always been envious of us. They've always been jealous of what we've had to offer, and they did not even want us to know how valuable we were. If you got a bunch of people in a place that you brought here for a particular assignment, and then you make up a law that says, if you teach these folks how to read, I'm gonna put you in jail. That tells you everything you need to know. What are you afraid of? You don't want them to know how to read. Why? Because they're going to discover some information that you don't want them to have. And that information is that these people were great. They were never downtrodden. They were never slaves. They were never bums or underlings. They were people of merit, people of worth, people of value. And those values are not actually adhered to or embraced by a lot of our folks who are in the light right now.
Okay. So my next question is, during the time period during the 60s where, your group, as well as Gil Scott-Heron and some others, who are some of the Black leaders at that time that you really felt that they represented the Black agenda?
Well, of course, Malcolm X was the leader. Malcolm X was clear.
Well, he was following, Elijah Muhammad, but you talking about when he separated?
But when Malcolm separated, the thing about Malcolm, what made Malcolm so special, Malcolm, every phase of his life was an evolution, and he actually was totally involved with each phase. Malcolm never half-stepped. When he was Detroit Red, he was totally Detroit Red. He was robbing and pimping and stealing and doing all that bad stuff. And the only thing he couldn't do was the numbers because he couldn't remember the numbers. But he was doing everything else. And then when he was in prison, they called him Satan because he had that red hair and he was not a very nice guy. If you walked up on him wrong, he might hurt you. And so he got the name Satan. Then when he got to X, he became Malcolm X. He was a devoted follower of Elijah Muhammad. And he was truly devoted. And he went out of his way to promote and actually to add to the organization. Elijah, if you've ever heard Elijah talk, he couldn't talk.
No,
Malcolm could speak clearly. Malcolm studied the dictionary. That shows you how determined he was. Read the dictionary while he was incarcerated. Who in the hell would do that? The dictionary ain't no fun book to read. This man read, he wanted to have command of the language. And then Malcolm, when he started realizing that there were some Muslims who were not all black, some of them were white, but they were practicing the same faith, his whole attitude changed. He became El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, and he embraced another attitude. Malcolm was true from the very beginning until the very end. So when you talk about leaders, that's one of the people that I've always looked up to because of his honesty, and each phase of his life was an honest development. And then Martin Luther King was another leader.
Right.
And my father he didn't really care about Martin Luther King too much because he said, I'm from the South. And this man talking about peace and love. He said, them white folks down there sleep with their guns. Somebody gonna kill that man. My mother, she revered him. She had me put my hand on TV when he did his speech, I Have a Dream, like I'm gonna get some power from the speech. I mean, the fact is that Martin was also a leader and he had good intentions for his folks. And as time went on, he began to realize that he might be on the wrong track because he even had a speech that said, I'm afraid I'm integrating my people into a burning building.
That was the economic portion of it, whereas he felt that we were losing our black businesses.
And he spoke out against the Vietnamese War. A lot of people don't realize all the wars are bankers' wars. The banks, they gain a great deal of profit from wars. And so, we got people dying for money, and money is an illusion. And people are not sacred. Any of our leaders who have held people on the highest plane, those are the folks now my personal friend of mine, who was a person I looked up to, was Stokely Carmichael, who became Kwame Ture.
Right.
And we were very close friends. I love Stokely because he was brilliant. He was brilliant and he cared about his folks. A lot of folks don't realize he started out in SCLC with Martin Luther King. And there's some footage of when Martin would speak to some of the people down south, Stokely would be in the back saying, Black Power, Black Power. and it would irritate Martin because he knew he couldn't stand on the platform of Black Power. Those two words alone are intimidating to white people. If black folks have power, that means that white people don't have power because the power that they have is dependent upon our service to them.
Service to got you.
Can I go back really quick, Big O? Just you were talking about Malcolm X being incarcerated, and I know for a time you were incarcerated. I think it was in North Carolina.
Yes.
For about 4 years or so. My question to you was: you were already a last poet before you went into prison, and then coming out. Did that shape your poetry? How did that change you as far because you weren't, with the black poets for a while? After your incarceration, how did that affect you?
First of all, sister, I thought I had missed the revolution. I thought that my incarceration. I said, ain't this a trip? Because I had robbed the Klan. I'm a part of an African village in South Carolina, and it's a Yoruba village, and it's called Oyotunji. You can look it up on your gadget; it still exists. And Oyotunji it's in Sheldon, South Carolina. And I was in North Carolina, and the person that gave me my name was there also. We were there under the auspices of the United Church of Christ. United Church of Christ has a division called Committee for Racial Justice. they had some land in North Carolina, and it's the home of the first black junior college in Bricks, right? It's a little piece of land in between a town called Whitaker and another town called Enfield, about 40 miles from Rocky Mount, which is a bigger town. So we were there together. Me and Baba O. Surgeman was the brother that gave me my name. He taught me the language, the Yoruba language. I'd gotten my name when I was 15 years old, but I didn't really use it because I'm not familiar with the African language. People call me Chuck, and I was happy being Chucky. I was lucky Chucky. I made a jump shot to win a game one time, and I was riding high. Chuck was fine with me. But as I grew and understand what was happening, I started to embrace my African name. And now I'm with Baba, and he's giving me information. I'm learning the language and so forth. So when the program that we were supposed to be working for dissolved, I continued to work for the United Church of Christ, and my job was to go to Shaw University. Now, I had not finished my undergraduate education. So I went to Shaw University working for the United Church of Christ. My job was a college developer. I don't know what I was really assigned to do, but they gave me a house, and I had a car, and I went to school. But I was so appalled because when I got onto campus, the students were pledging Greek, and I could not believe it. What the hell are you pledging Greek for? We're not Greeks. So I said we should be pledging African societies. Why are you branding your arms with Greek letters?
Speak on it.
I could not believe it. I mean, it broke my heart. So I became a monster on that campus, and I started the Yoruba Society. And I said we should have the Maasai Society. We should have a Watusi Society. We got African societies that we should be upholding here. Why are we dismissing them? I would get on the steps of the student union and make up these impromptu speeches. I scared those folks to death. I had about 50 students who were wearing African clothes all the time. And I got them to change it. I was acting like a priest. I'm giving names to people. I'm really gone crazy. I even got my professor, Reverend Fleming, God rest his soul, he's a good brother. I was taking African history class, and he was wearing the blazer and the tie. And I said, why are you wearing them cracker clothes? And he said, what you talking about? I said, you got on cracker clothes, and you're teaching African history like Africans have no clothes. I said, where's your dashiki, brother? I said, man, Reverend Fleming, he went out and bought a dashiki and wore it underneath his blazer. And every time he see me, he open up his blazer and say, I got my shiki. I got my shiki. I mean, listen, he's no longer with us, but I love Reverend Fleming. He's a good brother. But I wanted everybody to be African. I wanted us to recognize and embrace our Africanness because there had been something that was taken from us. We were not allowed to be African. You could not call yourself the name that you were born with. You could not even play the drums. There was only one place in America where you could play the drums, and that was in Congo Square in New Orleans. And you could only do that on Sunday. They were afraid that we would find a way to communicate and do something horrible to them if we played the drums. So I was embracing my African culture. And the fact is that when I could not see how we could embrace this European stuff. So it became a real issue for me. So, but then I had these Thursday meetings, town meetings, to let the students know what we were doing. And plus I was recruiting other folks to join us. And his brother said to me, he says, well, yo, suppose the police, the term we used back then was vamp. Suppose people vamp on you and your sisters with their boobas, lapas, and geles and your dashikis. Oh, you got a bulletproof dashiki? Oh, you gonna knock them out you gonna hit them in the head with your afro? So they're making jokes. So where's your guns? How are you gonna protect yourself if the pig comes down on you? I said, anybody can get a gun, that ain't no problem. So anyway, I designed a takeover, a ripoff of some guns. There are two shops in Raleigh, North Carolina that sold guns, Thorns and Dixie's. I don't even know if they exist now, but those were the two shops. I got a hold of the blueprint of the places, and I had my boys go in there and steal some guns from them. We actually were holding the guns in the basement of the president's mansion, Missouri Hall. We had access to that place because that's what we did the school newspaper. But two of my boys, they had dropped, two of the guys had dropped a duffel bag with some guns in it because they heard a sound. And when they got back to the spot, they didn't have any guns. Everybody said, where are the guns? And they said, man, we heard a noise, so we dropped them. So they went back to get them, but they went back with a third person, found out that the third person happened to be an informant, and they got busted. They got put in jail. So now my whole thing was, because this is my organization, this was my plan, I felt responsible for them being in jail. I tried to get President Cheek. King Cheek was the president of Shaw University at that time. And his brother James Cheek became president of Howard later on. Anyway, King Cheek, he actually said that he would take care of it. I went to his house later on in the afternoon. His wife told me he had gone to Detroit. Those brothers were still in jail.
Wow.
But I had some guns because we had ripped off some guns. So there's a brother named Alexander Young, who is a good friend of mine, and he's passed away as well. He's a good brother. We had a lot of arguments because he was a Marxist-Leninist, but he wanted to be a part of what was happening. So he took on a name. I gave him a name for Joker, and he was dashiki. I think he had one dashiki he wore all the time. But I could depend on him because he was a loyal brother. I knew he was loyal. I knew he had heart. So I said, listen, man, I got a gun. You got a gun. I know we can get some money, and we can kill two birds with one stone. I know where the Klan have their meetings, and we can steal some money from them and get our boys out of jail on bail. Now, I knew about this
Klan. You guys are going to go rob the Klan? Is that what you did?
Yes,
the
ma'am.
Ku Klux Klan. Circle of white brothers.
Okay, that's what I heard. I just wanted to make sure.
If you look up the story, if you look up, and if they got it written down in place, they refer to the people we robbed as the Watkins brothers. The Watkins brothers were two major members of the Ku Klux Klan. How I knew that was there was an organization, and I don't know if you're aware of it, called SDS back in the day. SDS was Students for a Democratic Society. They were radical white kids. And there was another group called the Weathermen. They were even more radical because the Weathermen would blow stuff up. They weren't playing. But these are white radical groups. When I first went to Raleigh, I saw a parade where the Klan was marching down Fayetteville Street with their outfits on, with their white robes on. I couldn't believe it because I had only seen it on television. But to see that live blew me away. But the other thing was I saw rocks coming from behind me being thrown at these folks. And they were these white kids. This one kid had almost like a big boulder in his hand. And I said, man, you're going to start a riot. He said, I hope so, man. I hate them. He said, they tried to recruit me. There's a white kid that worked in the filling station next to the motor lodge where they had their meetings. He said, we ought to torch their place. I know where they have their meetings. But I had never done nothing with a white boy. So I thought about torching the place, but I said, I don't know, working with a white boy might not be cool. But he told me where the spot was. And so I remembered the spot. Now I got to get my boys out of jail. So I figured I'll go to the spot that I've been informed about. And I know they got money because they collect dues. And I'll get the money from them, embarrass the Klan, and get my boys out of jail. Anyway, it was a nice idea. My plan was screwed up. We did rob them, but a Pepsi Cola truck showed up at the filling station. The guys got out the truck. They came into the store. We had just locked the guys up in the storeroom. And Alex said to me, he says, yo, man, what are we going to do with these guys coming in? I said, they're not a part of it. Just walk by. We walked by them. But of course, the guys must have been knocking on the door. They realized something had happened. They ran back to the Pepsi Cola truck, took out rifles, and started shooting at us. And then we were in the woods for about 8 hours. So it was a manhunt. I am very happy and grateful to my ancestors and to God himself that I'm alive to tell you the story. Because I could have easily been killed because they had the sheriffs looking for us. They had the good fellows looking for us. They had the state troopers looking for us. Everybody was looking for us. And we were in the woods for about 8 hours running for our lives. It was crazy. But I discovered a lot. I mean, it was an interesting situation. All I know is that particular incident garnished me some respect that I would not. It's still hard for me to understand today why I got the respect that I got. I was given 12 to 20 years in the state penitentiary for that robbery. They tried to put a kidnapping charge. James H. Pugh Bailey was the judge. And he said that your charge carried 50 years, and I'll be goddamn if you don't get it in my court. And I said,
whoa.
Yeah, and I said, well, Judge Bailey, since you're already determined to give me the maximum of what this charge carries, can I at least try to get a defense for myself? I'm not from North Carolina, and I need to use the phone to at least call some people to try to muster up a defense. And he said, let him use my phone. So I'm in his office using the phone, and the sheriff said, how come you using James P. Bailey's phone? Boy, I said, will you be quiet, please? I can't talk on the phone. You make all this noise. But he actually let me use his phone. And I'm calling up everybody to try to get out on bail because my bail was $100,000. I needed $10,000 to get out on bail. And I figured once I got out, I was never coming back to North Carolina. But that was another story. The fact of the matter is that I got the time. I had a black lawyer named Reginald Fraser who became one of the lieutenant governors of North Carolina. Right. And I asked him one simple question when the judge gave us the time. I said to Reginald, I said, how much time would I have to do before I'm eligible for parole? And he said, well, I wouldn't look forward to getting parole because you're I said, I didn't ask you all what to look forward to. I asked you one question. What kind of time do I have to do before I am eligible for parole? And my wife was there, my oldest son's mother. She was there at the court with me. And he said, well, you got to do 1/4 of your minimum sentence. I said, okay, 1/4 of 12 is 3. Is that right? He said, yeah, that's right. I said, okay. I turned to BG, my wife. I said, all right, I'm 22 years old. I'll be out when I'm 25. Are you going to wait? She said, I'll wait. I said, okay, so I'm good. I'm getting my mind together. I'm preparing for 3 years. So I'm going to be away. And I go into prison. And it was an adventure and a half. After being raised by Daddy Joe, by my father, this man that raised me, prison was like boys' camp. They get up too late. Every prison starts their day at 6 o'clock. Don't you know you're like half an hour late?
Yeah.
You done already got the chicken eggs and everything by 6 o'clock.
I done fed the chickens, the rabbits.
Yeah.
I done weeded the garden. I done done everything by the time you'll get up. Are you kidding? And I remember one of the guards came by my cell one time. He said, boy, did you go to sleep last night? I said, yes, I went to sleep. And I had pleasant dreams. Because they take their stick and break it across the cell to kind of wake you up. They never had to do that for me. I was up already. I'd be sitting there waiting, looking at them. They try to figure out what's up with this guy. To show you the respect I got, and I don't think anybody got disrespect. Mail call can be very, very, very disturbing because if you don't get any mail, that means your ass is up for grabs. And I'm not just saying that as a cliche. I'm saying that literally. Nobody cares about you. Somebody's going to try to get with you. I've seen it happen. And it's a painful thing to see, brother. It's painful.
I'd have wrote letters to myself.
That whole homosexual thing, that's a culture in prison. And I saw a brother named Jesse, who was a Marine, who was in there, but he had 40 years. And it was for being with a white girl. That was his girl. It was consensual sex. But her uncle saw him and her together and said, if you don't tell me that nigga was raping you, I'm going to tell your father. You ain't going to get nothing. She said he raped her, and they gave him 40 years. And Jesse did not do nothing. He did not rape that woman. But he didn't have, nobody was writing him. And I saw William Brakefield, one of them inmates in there, because I worked in the hospital dorm. I worked in the prison hospital. To show you how funny life is, I had gone to school to be a doctor. I was a super biology major. Science was my thing. I was always a good English student. That was natural. But science, I wanted to be a doctor badly. So I knew science and ended up being in prison. And the job assignments that I got was working in the prison hospital. Now, are the ancestors deep or what?
Man,
Absolutely.
That's cross.
Absolutely.
I'm working. I'm in charge. Matter of fact, I had the key to the cabinet that had the heavy drugs like morphine. Yeah. Because Mr. Calton, this old faggot nurse, he trusted me. So I had the keys. I had Demerol, Darbons, you name the drug, I had access to that.
Oh, you was getting nice up in there.
They trusted the man who came to jail for larceny with the keys to the medicine.
So I want to ask you a few questions, right? This and that. I'm gonna ask the two things, and you can say one or the other. You can say both or neither. All right. So I'm gonna give you a warm-up one that's pretty easy. All right. Would you prefer oatmeal or grits?
Grits.
Okay.
Of
All right.
course.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. So yeah. And then it's my job. I'm trying to ask you some very difficult questions. So
I
you
got
gotta take both. That's my job, right?
Okay.
So like right now, right? I'm gonna start off with some hard ones. Let's see what you do. All right. If I said Malcolm X or Stokely Carmichael, what would you go with?
Oh.
Well,
Both?
listen, I love both of them. Both of them, really.
There you go.
Malcolm and Stokely are both in my heart because I didn't know Malcolm, but I knew Stokely. Stokely and I were good friends.
Okay.
We would sit and talk together. And I know that he became aware, became politically astute because he went to Bronx Science High School, which is a special high school in New York City.
Yeah.
And when Fidel was taking over Cuba, him and some of his white radical friends went to Cuba, and Stokely was never the same. He came back a revolutionary.
Absolutely. So now I'll give you another one. Kwame Nkrumah or Patrice Lumumba?
Woo! Again, I have to say both because they both were representative.
I told you I'm starting off hard.
Yeah, because they both represented. Kwame Nkrumah what he did was very special. Lumumba was, wow. And I think one of them went to Lincoln University.
Nkrumah.
Nkrumah went to Lincoln. So I definitely, because he knew what the vibe was over here, but he went back to Africa and he didn't take any of those European habits with him. He still was true to the African culture and cause. So I appreciate, but both of them, I couldn't weigh. They're on a balanced scale as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. I told you I was going to start. I'm going to give you some easier ones. Parliament Funkadelic or the Ohio Players?
The Funkadelics, man. I mean,
I know.
Because and the reason I have to say that George Clinton and I we on one of our albums where we're singing together.
Absolutely.
And Bootsy Collins was actually born. I was raised for my first 3 years of life in Cincinnati. I was raised on Oliver Street, and Bootsy was born in an alley on Oliver Street. And so that's why. Yes, I said when he told me that, because Umar, he was in the studio recording with Bill Laswell, was a producer of many of our good albums, and he was recording. And so Umar told me, he says, Boosie's downstairs, but he don't talk to nobody. I said, did he bring his bass? He said, yeah. I said, that's all we're concerned about. So I go downstairs and I say, Boosie. I said, where you from? He said, I'm from Cincinnati. I said, I'm from Cincinnati. What are you talking about? You from Cincinnati? He said, where you from in Cincinnati? And I said, I was raised on Oliver Street. He said, man, I was born in an alley off of Oliver Street. He said, you kidding? And we were sitting there talking for about 2 or 3 hours. Umar came down and says, what's your Boosie talking about? I said, none of your business. You don't talk.
Absolutely. Look. Now I'm going to go a little bit more modern. Patti LaBelle or Aretha Franklin?
I got to go with Aretha because she was a queen, man. I love Patti. Patti LaBelle was outrageous. I've been to concerts where she kicks her shoe off and hit a drummer in the head with a shoe. I mean, she's a cut up. And I rode the train coming from Philadelphia to New York with her husband, and he was telling me that if she did not have work, that she was a piece of work if she was in the house. So he said the best thing to keep that marriage going, the best thing to keep that marriage going was to put her on the road to have her busy. Because if she was not busy, she could be a problem.
Yes.
But Aretha, I've always loved Aretha because I remember seeing Aretha after she had lost a bit of weight and she was showing off her legs and stuff. She was trying to look cute, and she was in the Apollo. But Aretha, Aretha's sound was just special, and plus, her father, Reverend Franklin, he was a black preacher. He wasn't no joke, and he understood who he was, and he represented the culture. And Aretha got a good dose of the culture. She was very black. She wasn't like Nina Simone, but she had that same energy that Nina Simone had. She cared. She loved it. She loved her people.
Okay. This one's a little different because this one's a little hard because it was hard for me even ask because I don't even know what it. Stevie Wonder or Earth, Wind and Fire?
I gotta go with Stevie, man. I love Earth, Wind and Fire, and I've been to a concert. You don't even sit down at Earth, Wind and Fire concert. Hey. Your seats are standing because they're gonna give you a show. I mean, it's outrageous, but Stevie Wonder is a true. His name says everything. I mean, the man's name was Steve Landmarsh, but he is a wonder. He is a human wonder. And plus, his consciousness is so sweet. And, you know, and I met Stevie. Stevie is a clown. He's humorous. He's got a sense of humor that is off the chain. When I met him in Atlanta, Georgia. And I shook his hand. I said, I'm Abiodun. He says, he says, yeah, you're one of those last poets. And I said, how do you know that? He said, I know you are. And he said, well, this is my bodyguards. This is Craig and this is David. So I said, this is Craig and this is Gary. And so I said, how you doing, Gary? He said, that's not Gary. Like he could see you. I was saying,
okay, so many people have said that he could see.
Absolutely. He said he plays practical jokes on everyone. Absolutely.
And then I had a long talk. I had about a 2-hour talk with Sarita, one of his wives. And she says, I know you love Stevie, but Stevie is fucking crazy. And so she told me, she was telling me how she would leave the house because they got a big house here in New York City, someplace they got an apartment here. And she would go window shopping. And you know, if you go to Bloomingdale's, there's on the first floor, they got the perfume section, and she might try some perfumes. So she come back and see me, say, where you been? She says, I just went window. No, you didn't smell like that when you left this morning. And she says, I just tried some perfume on. And so he said he would get outraged and swore that she had somebody on the side, and she'd try to get away from him, and she'd run into a room and he'd be there already. She said it was the spookiest shit. I said he could probably hear you. I said he could probably hear your heartbeat. He knew where you were before you got there.
Right.
But she said that she said that he terrorized her and he was hard to live with. I said he's a genius. I don't think there's a genius anywhere on the planet who is easy to live with, because when your brain is working as well as his is, as well as anybody, Einstein, whoever you are, if you got an overloaded brain, you're going to be in conflict with yourself as well as other people a lot of times. Now, it's going to take a special person to have tolerance of your behavior.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I need to tell my husband that. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, the next one is still a little more difficult. Luther Vandross or Marvin Gaye?
Marvin Gaye, please.
Woo! Wow. Over Luther? The New York?
Let me tell you something. Luther's bank at the same bank I did, and so but he didn't come to the bank. His manager would bring the money, and he did all the work for Luther. And he told me, he says, when Luther was in love, he would lose weight. He'd be in good shape. When he was not in love, he would blow up. He'd get fat. But Luther, and I said it's interesting. I said, so if he didn't have a lover, then he would make sweets his lover. He said, you got it, brother. And I said, but so then I asked him a real question. I said, now, you know, Luther's concerts, he's got about 90% of the audience is female. I said, he ain't singing to none of them women. I says, well, I said, you ain't got to say well to me. I know Luther's gay. He's gay as shit. I said, it's a shame. I said, because the gift is authentic. And I said, Luther and Michael Jackson both have made me recognize we have to learn how to accept the gift. Do not get caught up with the giver, because if you get caught up in the light of the giver, it may turn you off. The gift is real. It's rich. It will enrich you. It'll make you feel good. It's like you go to a restaurant, order some food, you look at something on the menu, and it looks great, and you order it, and they serve it to you, and you eat, and you say, "Woo, this is good. I'm gonna come back here, boy." And then you see your cook crawling out, looking like a reptile. And somebody says, "Oh, that's the chef, by the way." That's gonna stop you from coming back. You know, you just ate the food, you just enjoyed the food, and talked about coming back. You didn't know what the chef looked. You had no idea what the chef looked like. You didn't know that he was on all fours and he looked horrible. But you ate the food, and that's the way you have to deal with the gift. The gift is rich, and as they say, God works in mysterious ways. And sometimes we can't always figure out how this person ended up with such a gift. Luther's voice is tremendous. The reason I would put Marvin over Luther is because after Tammy Terrell died, Marvin went up to the mountains, came back with what's going on.
In the city.
And when he shared that stuff with Barry Gordy, who was the person that he was working under, Barry Gordy, the first thing Barry Gordy said, now we call this from a friend of mine, said, "What you think, you're a last poet?"
Absolutely. I want to know your take, because this one is one that I think a person like yourself, I wouldn't ask any other guest this question, because you have so many years with people, and also you're astute and political. What is your take on Louis Farrakhan throughout the ages? What is your take on Nation of Islam and his leadership?
I think Farrakhan is a good student of Malcolm. In terms of learning how to articulate like Malcolm, he's got that kind of he's not as charismatic as Malcolm was, as far as I'm concerned, but he definitely he was cut from that same that blueprint that Malcolm laid out. Matter of fact, all of the Muslim brothers use the Malcolm pattern to copy from.
Absolutely.
And Farrakhan is truly a great student. I think that Farrakhan has. I'm very proud of the fact that that he's still with us, because I know he had prostate cancer.
Yeah, like a decade ago. Yeah.
Because Mtume and him had it at the same time. I called Mtume, was good for mine. Mtume did Juicy.
Yes.
I called Mtume because we were very good friends. And and he said, "Oh, dude, I was just thinking about you. Me and Lewis are down here waiting for a plane. We're on our way to Havana, Cuba." And I said, "You and Lewis?" And he said, "Lewis, I know who you're talking about." I said, "Lewis?" He says, "Yeah, Farrakhan. We both got the big C." And I said, "Whoa." I said, "So you're going to Cuba?" He said, "Yeah, they got much better treatment, because see, the Cubans use shark cartilage. The cartilage in sharks is an antidote to cancer, and it does not." Yes, and European, the white folks know it. See, cancer in America is a cash cow.
For sure. Yeah.
Every time you go to get chemo, that's $1,000. Now, if you get shark cartilage and you get rid of your cancer, ain't no what the doctor ain't getting paid. The doctor's got to get paid. You being ill is profitable in America, and this is the kind of evilness that we're dealing with. Farrakhan he's still here. He still gives a Sacred Day message, and he was diagnosed with cancer over 30 years ago. I mean, and he's still with us. Mtume checked out. I don't know, he had some other complications, but he checked out not too long ago. But he was a very dear friend of mine, and he even got me a piece. I did a segment on New York Undercover because of Mtume. And matter of fact, Dick Wolf, the guy that produces that show, I was unaware of the fact that he knew who I was, because he said that when I was down there to see Al Jarreau, because Al Jarreau was a friend of mine too. And I love Al. Oh man, I love Al Jarreau. He was great. He had gymnastics in his mouth, man. I mean, oh my God.
Gymnastics in his mouth.
But the fact is that I was down there, and Dick Wolf told him, he says, "Why don't we get Abiodun to do a segment of New York Undercover?" So he had me. So there's a segment I'm on, but I'm doing Black Rage, one of my pieces, and it's during the time of the Jews and the Muslims are getting here to have a little battle, and the whole. And I was pretty sure they were going to take out some of the lines, because I got one line in there where I said, "A human gun made and manufactured in the United Snakes of America." I said, I know they're going to take that out.
Yeah.
They didn't take nothing out. Everything is intact.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
So, but Farrakhan is truly, I think he's a worthy leader. I would never be a Muslim. I could never be a Muslim. And that's primarily because I know my history. The Muslims, the people practicing Islam, joined Christians to create the slave trade. A lot of Muslims don't want to hear that. A lot of Muslims will have issues with that, but the fact is that's the truth. Many of the people who were put into slavery did not practice Islam. In Nigeria, for example, they gathered up people who were practicing the Yoruba religion, and they lived in the section where they had a tsetse fly. The tsetse fly is a fly that kills all livestock. So we lived close together, and we were probably mostly vegetarian, because we couldn't have no beef, because if you had a cow, the tsetse fly would kill it. And we didn't have no horses, because that would be killed by the tsetse fly. The houses lived in the north. They didn't have that fly. And if you have a chance to have you're in a place where you don't have to worry about your livestock dying, you don't have to live next door to me. You can live a mile away from me because you got a horse. But now, if we, depending upon each other for survival, we're going to live close together. So us living in the projects, that's not a problem. We know how to do that easily. We can live close together. And I mean, history always repeats itself in weird ways. The truth of the matter is that when it came time to make some money or profit off of us, see, the problem is that the people who were working with the strangers, the visitors that came to take us, they didn't know that the slavery, because slavery's always existed.
Correct.
But this kind of slavery was totally new. They didn't have no idea that our identities would be erased, that we would not be able to practice our culture, our customs, and that they would erase everything and start us at the point of zero. And we would have to adopt their names. We could not speak our language. So the folks that sold us, that helped sell us into slavery, did not know what they were doing because they didn't know the viciousness of the person that they were selling us to, because they had a different idea. No slavery has ever existed on the level that what we've gone through. This is a totally different form of slavery, totally, and that we've had to endure. But it does still show that in spite of all of that, our resilience is off the chart, because we're not supposed to be here. And we have multiplied as opposed to dying. we continue to grow. And this country, America, is predominantly a country of color, and white folks are becoming the minority. And that's a major reason why Trump is in office, because he's like one of the last white man standing to beat on his chest and say, "Make America white again." It's
genetic annihilation, absolutely. And that's what you're saying. So now, for me to ask, who are some of the new leaders, black leaders, that is, or some of the poets that you see that you say, man, I like what they're doing, and it reminds you of some things of yourself, or even these individuals are going in the right direction?
I've had the pleasure of meeting quite a number of brothers and sisters. There's a brother named Black Chakra, who I like very much. He's got a piece that breaks down the NFL, and he compares it to the slave plantation, to the whole, and he does an excellent job. And I had a chance to be a guest at Poetry Me Please, which is an organization. And I've got a chance to see some super poets, and they were all coming in, bowing down, acting like I'm the Pope of poetry. And they were kissing my hand and everything. And the fact is that I don't really require that type of behavior. I mean, I look at myself as doing my assignment. Everybody has something to do, and I just want to do my job well. I want to live up to what my father used to always say: if you have a job worth doing, do it right. And I just want to do what I have to do right. I want to be good at whatever I do, no matter what it is. But a lot of folks want to give me praises, and I get on the elevator and say, "Yo, man, we're on the elevator with a legend." Man, that pisses me off. I'm not a legend. My mother's a legend. My mother's 98 years old. She's a legend, and she's still with us. I mean, I'm a brother who is trying to do something to change minds, to make us recognize the beauty of ourselves. And we talk about leaders. I just want us to recognize we are the people we've been waiting for. We have to become leaders within ourselves. And to look for that, anytime you have that one person that everybody's focused on as the person that's going to change the meter, he's going to be the straw to stir the drink. That person is easily shot down. We need to recognize that we've had enough folks come through our lives, from Martin to Malcolm to Stokely to Lumumba to Nkrumah, that we got information and we know what time it is. And we need to employ that in every little sphere of influence that we have. We need to share our information with those people that can listen and understand and be leaders unto each other, because we can solve this problem. The main thing is that we cannot allow ourselves to look for somebody else to solve it for us. We have the answers. We must be the people we've been looking for.
Absolutely. And also looking at one of the songs, so this is one of the ones that I actually heard first, was introduced to you. I've heard of The Last Poet, some of the poetry, Gil Scott-Heron, but what I actually heard was when Common actually utilized you guys in his song, and that was my first introduction. So now when I actually, think of you in The Last Poets, I was like, oh, The Corner. And then I heard your song, and then that made me to go look into it. So you're talking about 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I can't say like, oh yeah, I've been I was like, no, that was my introduction. Like, what are you talking about? The last, you don't know who the last poets are? I was like, okay, listen, I'm only 19. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 19. This rapper named Common. All right, cool. He ain't even from Jersey. You know, he from Chicago. But it was like,
during working with Common was a pleasure. Working with Nas was a pleasure because Nas's father and I are very close. His father's name is Oludara, and he plays cornet. And he's got a piece called Juicy Lips. And, you know, it's about a sister. And whenever he's on stage, if he knows I'm in the audience, he'll have me come up and I'll freestyle something because I love Juicy Lips. You know,
freestyle.
You know, I could Juicy Lips. Come on, that's
right up your alley.
Right up your alley.
So Nas called me up one day, and I always answer the phone to say, Alapia, may I help you? And my brother said, this is Nas. So I said, Nas, the rapper.
He's like, you know me.
He said, yes. I said, well, why are you calling me? He said, my father said, you're a nigga expert, and I need to do my album on niggas. I said, I'm not a nigga expert.
Yeah, that was Illmatic album.
He said because he said Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton had gotten in touch with Nas because they knew that he was going to do this album on niggas, and they said we're trying to put nigga to bed. We don't want that to be used. They try to have a funeral for niggas, and I said they can't have a funeral for niggas. I said niggas have evolved just like everything else. I said once upon a time the nigga was stinky and nasty and dirty and just unworthy. I said but hip hop has made the nigga the rebel. The nigga has become the I punch you in the face. I'm not following your rules and regulations. I say, and consequently, that attitude has been expressed globally because you got Italian niggas and Chinese niggas and Irish niggas.
Yeah.
I said, you got niggas everywhere. I said, I'm in the hotel in Rome, and there's guys in front of the hotel I'm staying in, and it says, yo, man, come on, nigga, why you act like that, nigga? I said, oh my God. I said,
yeah, I've seen it. I've seen Asian people. That was the one that baffled me. Asian people calling each other. I was like,
yeah, because
I was offended, but I'm looking like, wait a minute, he called that Asian a nick, and I'm sitting there confused.
That's the influence of hip hop because hip hop artists use the word nigga over time. And then the New York Times had me go out to California before Ice Cube became a big star in movies and stuff. They had a conversation. You could look it up. It was 1995. A conversation with Ice Cube and Abiodun. They call it intergenerational talk. Sheila Rule, who was a writer for the New York Times, and they put it in the Sunday section. I think it was the Easter Sunday section. A Sunday paper, New York Times, they have a magazine section, and on the front they have a picture of me and Cube with our heads are joined together like Siamese twins or something, and they had me out there having a conversation. She was recording the conversation that I was having with Cube. I didn't realize that the reason that they had done this, they wanted me out there, was to spank Cube because he called sisters bitches and he was using the word nigger. So I'm in this place called the School of Thought, the School of Knowledge, and one of his boys went and got us some fish and chips. So I'm sitting eating some fish and chips, and we rapping and said, "Well, if a sister act like a bitch, what else can you call her?" And we slapping and all that stuff. And I said, and I can't get on you about using the word nigger because we try to de-niggify everybody. I said,
de-niggify. I like that. We got to put that on the shirt. De-niggify.
Well, actually, that a lot of poems that they were talking about, it had the word in there, but it was kind of meaning the opposite of what people were saying. He was trying to say there's a lot of them here, but we need to, get back to this side. If I'm saying it, then I think like even in California, you had to watch Prophets. That's kind of like the West Coast last poet.
Yes, indeed.
That was kind of reminiscent of you guys.
Right. And so I said, the problem is that when you heard us saying niggas scared of revolution and run nigga and niggas under the people, y'all didn't think about the substance of what we were saying to try to erase nigga. Y'all just heard the word nigga, and that stood out. So y'all use the word nigga. I said, I can't come down on you saying something that I promoted. I said, if you don't want to see it exist, stop saying it. Don't use it. And that's the lesson I've learned. If you want beautiful people to be the mantra that we're going to run around saying, then refer to everybody as beautiful people. and maybe that'll get some play. But when you say, man, that nigga ain't shit, man, that nigga this, nigga, and everybody's gonna be using the term. I said the one thing about it, we have to recognize that, like everything else, the nigga has evolved. The nigga today is not the nigga from yesterday. And plus, tone has a lot to do with everything. Because if you say, get that nigga out of my sight, you know that's not a good person. At the same time, say, man, that nigga can ball. Man, that's a bad nigga. I love that nigga.
The inflection makes a difference.
It makes a big difference. It's how it's not what you say always, it's how you say it. You know, we got people that can say motherfucker and make you appreciate it. And motherfucker was never a term that we could appreciate. It's the national. I have this little lecture that I do about wanting to know the culture of the people, learn their curse word. What is a natural curse word for black people? Motherfucker. And why is our natural curse word? Because we revere our mothers. That's why. If you talk about if you tell somebody, a second grader, man, I saw your mother and she's this, he might punch you in the face. You don't talk about nobody's mother. Mother is what we revere. In every single culture, you can only have a curse word that has value. If it doesn't have no value, it has no curse.
Correct. So now, for me, So when you talk about some of the curse words and some of these people were saying them. So now when you place poetry, and now when you actually say, hey, I'm going to use it in a unique way, how do you say, all right, it's going to spark thought, it's going to spark controversy. However, I'm going to articulate myself in such a way where they got to respect the art.
Well, you know, that's the beauty of writing poetry. You know, I love it. I want to use the language in such a way that it will move you, and all poetry must provoke thought. I want you to not. I want you to think. And then I have a simple formula that I try to share with people who are attempting to write poetry. We've got 5 senses: sense of touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. I mean, and if you're not referring to one of those senses, then you're not writing poetry. Because because the poetry must activate my imagination. And those are the 5 avenues by which you can activate my imagination. You know, you got to give me something that I can smell. How does dignity smell? What does dignity smell like? What does racism taste like? What you know, I mean, you know, we got to do it. So we want to use the language in such a way that it will go not only into your mind, but into your soul, where you can see it and feel it. And that's a lot of folks that are claiming to be poets. I hate to say it, I have to come down on them sometimes. A lot of people think if they have a big vocabulary that they can become poets. Poetry ain't got nothing to do with having no large vocabulary. I refer to those big vocabulary poets as using bricks. Like I had a brother come in one time, and he said he met a girl at a party, and she was this, that, and the other. And then we went over to her crib, and we had a euphoric experience. I said, brother, why did you hit me in the face with that brick? He said, what brick? I said, you went to her house and had a euphoric. I said, I know what euphoria means, but other people got to pull out the dictionary. I said, can you show me the euphoria, brother? Yes. I said, don't be telling me you had a euphoria. I said, you just cheated. You did not write a poem. You were dealing with some damn vocabulary word in the dictionary.
I love it. I love it.
And he didn't appreciate it until later. He came back and said, yeah, dude, you're right. I said, well, listen, I'm not going to tell you something that's going to set you up to do wrong. I want you to be better than what you were. I said, I was schooled by people who knew what they were doing, and I can only pass my lessons on to you.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Question: we didn't talk about your family. How many children do you have?
I've got 7 children, 2 girls, and 5 boys.
Amen. All right.
And that's the greatest treasure I've ever produced. I love everything in my life. The thing that means more to me than anything is my children and the mothers of my children, because I'm friends with all of them. I know a lot of times relationships don't last. People hate each other. They go through changes. I don't have that. When any of my baby's mamas have a birthday, I'm one of the first people to call and say, Happy Earth Day, and make sure you tell your mother it's her birthday.
Absolutely.
All right. I love that. Before we get out of here, just one thing you want to say to the black man. Do you have anything you want to say to the black man before we get out of here today?
What I'd like to say to black men is don't be afraid of being a black man. Don't try to be something less than being a man. And when I say being a man, that does not mean that you're going to be callous, that you're going to be cold, and men can cry, men can show emotion. Men have 23 X chromosomes in their system, which means that there's a part of us that has a female in us. We came from a female. And the reason that those 23 chromosomes are there is for us to respect the female inside of us so that we can respect the female outside of us. We must pay attention to that. We must recognize that the woman has always been the keeper of the culture. She is the queen of our existence, and she must be protected and must be loved. Every Black man that can hear my voice, please recognize the fact that the sisters need our love. I know that some of you have been enchanted by the snow bunnies, and they've been making them very easily available to you. But you're not doing yourself or your people any justice by aligning yourself with a snow bunny. Let the snow bunny find herself a snowman, and you stay with your sister, because we need you more than ever. The brothers, the kids need you, the sisters need you, and you need you too.
All right. Well, you heard it from Mr. Abiodun Oyewole. Give it up for him, y'all, for being on KROSS BARZ. I'm Jay Tanae. This is Big O. This is KROSS BARZ. You can find us on all the social media platforms, and that's KROSS BARZ. You can find us on Instagram and all other places. Thank you again so much, brother, for being on the show. Love to speak to you again. Good luck to you. God bless. And thank you so much for blessing our podcast.
Thank you for having me, and you'll just be good and stay blessed.